if the UK attempts to obstruct the peace deal by sending its forces to Ukraine, will the US likely ignite the Scottish and Irish independence movements? So yeah, the UK is saying that, Starmer, that guy Keir Starmer, the current temporary prime minister of the UK, he met with Zelensky right after Zelensky left the US, and right after his disastrous meeting with Trump, and he met Zelensky and received him very warmly and said that the UK will support the Zelensky regime and uh, ensure the war continues. So let's say Keir Starmer puts his money where his mouth is, and sends money to Ukraine, and let's say even sends soldiers to Ukraine. Hmm? What happens then? The Russians will annihilate those soldiers. They will launch airstrikes and missile strikes and wipe out those soldiers before they can even, uh, you know, change their clothes. The Russians will do that. But the bigger problem is if the British government goes against the US in this manner, then Trump, what can Trump do? Will the Trump regime reignite these independence movements? It sounds far fetched, but understand the historical context. Forget the Scottish independence movement. When it comes to the Irish independence movement, for the most part, for the majority of the 20th century, there was this long, drawn out, and pretty intense Irish independence struggle against the British occupiers of Ireland. And in the UK, it's called the Troubles. And you had Irish resistance fighting British soldiers on the streets of Ireland. And the British soldiers committed all kinds of atrocities and massacres against the Irish. So the Irish hate the British. And this insurgency went on for decades and decades. And in the 80s, they almost took out Margaret Thatcher. Lobbed, they launched a mortar shell at the hotel room where she was staying, and she just happened to be in a different room at the time. That's why she survived. So this went on for a very long time. Okay. Now, Margaret Thatcher was a very independent lady. You can say whatever you want about her policies, but as long as she was the prime minister of the UK was a sovereign nation. It may have been no longer a first-rate world power, but it was sovereign. It did not toe the American line. Okay. The moment, so after she stepped down, or after she ended her political career, the next prime minister was John Major. And under John Major also, the UK was reasonably a sovereign nation. After John Major, you have the advent of Mr. Tony Blair as prime minister of the UK. And it is at that point in time, with the prime ministership of Tony Blair, that the UK becomes a US lapdog. The UK was no longer sovereign from that moment on. So people have called Mr. Tony Blair an American poodle. Okay, not a very nice thing to say, but it is what it is. And once Tony Blair comes to power, lo and behold, the Irish insurgency ends. Yeah, just like that, like magic. The moment you have a prime minister in office who turns his country into a US vassal, immediately the Irish insurgency ended. So you can, I suppose, put two and two together, right? You can. So yeah. So if Keir Starmer goes against US interests, what could the Americans do? Will they reignite the Irish insurgency, freedom struggle, and maybe the Scottish freedom struggle? William Wallace, freedom, give me freedom or give me death, all that stuff? No. They don't need to do that. They don't need to take such drastic measures. All they need to do, the Americans, is a regime change. Get rid of Starmer. There's a political coup in the political party, and his MPs no longer have confidence in him, and they withdraw support, and some new puppet leader comes up. That's all that needs to be done. You don't need to to reignite an independence movement if the UK is not behaving. Just get rid of that prime minister. Okay, give him a slap on the wrist, put him back into the back benches of the parliament, and have a new puppet leader in his place. That's all the US needs to do. So yeah, Starmer is acting up right now, but it won't last long.